I wasn't invited to my brother's wedding, but they sent me the $26,000 bill. I found out my brother was getting married, the same way strangers did, through social media. A perfectly edited video, white roses, soft music, smiling faces, and right there in the center, my brother Adam standing next to a woman I had never met, getting married. First, I thought it was a joke, a surprise, maybe something I wasn't told about yet. So I called him. It rang. Once, twice, then voicemail. "Hey, it's me," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "I just saw the video. What's going on? Call me back." He didn't. Instead, I got a message. Not from him. From my mother. "Emily, we need to talk." My stomach tightened instantly, because in our family, that sentence never meant anything good. I called her immediately. "Mom, what is happening?" I asked. There was a pause. Too long. Then she said something that didn't make sense. "It all happened very fast." "What happened fast?" I asked. "He got married and didn't invite me?" Another pause. "Emily, it was complicated." Complicated. That word hit me harder than anything else. Because it wasn't complicated. It was simple. I wasn't invited. "Why?" I asked. Silence. Then finally, Adam thought it would be better this way. Better. Better for who? Because it definitely wasn't better for me. "He's my brother," I said, my voice breaking. "How do you get married without your own sister there?" "He didn't want any tension," she replied carefully. That's when it clicked. "This is about money, isn't it?" I said. She didn't answer, which was answer enough, because money had always been the problem, not mine. There. 3 years earlier, everything changed in our family. Our father passed away. Suddenly. Unexpectedly. And with him, he left behind something none of us expected. A will. And that will split the family in half. My father had owned a small construction company. Nothing massive, but enough to build a comfortable life. And when he passed, everyone assumed Adam would inherit it, because he was the son, the responsible one, the one who worked with him. But that's not what happened. Instead, my father left everything equally. Half to Adam, half to me. The day the lawyer read that out loud, I saw it. The shift. Not just in Adam, but in my mother too. Disappointment. Shock. Something darker. Because in their minds, I didn't deserve it. I was just the daughter who moved away, started her own life, didn't contribute to the family business. But what they didn't see was everything I had done behind the scenes. The money I sent when things were tight. The support. The sacrifices. None of that mattered. All they saw was the will. And from that day on, everything changed. Adam became distant, cold, short. Conversations turned into arguments. "You didn't earn this," he told me once. "It wasn't your decision," I replied. "No," he said. "It was a mistake." That was the moment I realized something painful. I hadn't just lost my father. I was losing my brother too. Months passed. Then years. We stopped talking. Family dinners became rare. Then non-existent. Until eventually, there was nothing left. Just silence. So when my mother said, "He didn't want tension," I understood exactly what she meant. He didn't want me there. 'Cause my presence reminded him of something he couldn't accept. But even then, I didn't expect what happened next. Because 3 days after the wedding, a package arrived at my door. No return address. Just my name. I opened it slowly. Inside was a thick envelope. And a note. Short. Simple. "Your share." My hands froze. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. I pulled out the papers. And that's when I saw it. Invoices. Receipts. Contracts. Page after page. Flowers. Catering. Venue. Music. Decorations. And at the bottom, a total. $26,000. My heart stopped, because right beneath it was my name. And one line. Amount due $13,000. Half. They were charging me half. For a wedding. I was. For more inspiring and heart-touching stories like this, Please subscribe to our channel. To even invite it to. I stared at the paper in disbelief. This had to be a mistake. It had to be. So I picked up my phone and called Adam. This time, he answered. Yeah, he said coldly. What is this? I asked, holding the paper tightly. You got it, he replied. Are you serious right now? I said. You didn't invite me to your wedding. And now you're sending me a bill? It's your responsibility too, he said. My chest tightened. Responsibility for what? The family, he replied. Dad would have wanted you to contribute. I almost laughed. Dad would have wanted me at the wedding, I said. Silence. Then, that wasn't possible. And just like that, everything inside me changed. Because this wasn't just disrespect. This was something else. Something colder. Something calculated. They didn't just exclude me. They wanted to use me. And in that moment, I made a decision. I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. And I definitely wasn't going to pay. Instead, I was going to do something they would never expect. Because if they thought sending me that bill was the end of the story, they were very, very wrong. I wasn't invited to my brother's wedding, but they sent me the $26,000 bill. I stared at the invoice for a long time after the call ended. $13,000. For a wedding I wasn't invited to. For a celebration I didn't even know was happening. For a brother who clearly didn't want me there. First I felt angry, then hurt. Then something else slowly started to settle in. Something colder, clearer. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't confusion. This was intentional. Adam hadn't just excluded me. He had planned this. I picked up the papers again and went through them carefully this time. Line by line. Every detail. Venue. $9,500. Catering. $8,200. Decorations. $3,400. Photography. $2,100. Miscellaneous. $2,800. Everything added up neatly to $26,000. Split perfectly in half. Your share. I almost smiled. Because if there was one thing I had learned growing up in this family, it was this. Nothing was ever random. Everything had a purpose. And if Adam thought I was just going to panic and send money, he didn't know me as well as he thought. I grabbed my laptop and started digging. The first thing I checked was the venue. It didn't take long to find it. A luxury countryside estate. Elegant. Expensive. Too expensive. I clicked through the website. Gallery after gallery. Weddings that looked like they belonged in magazines. And then I saw it. A small note under the pricing section. Full payment required prior to event confirmation. I leaned back slowly. That didn't make sense. If full payment was required before the wedding, then why were they sending me a bill after it was already over? Look, they had already paid everything. And now they were trying to get money back. From me. I exhaled slowly. Okay, I whispered to myself. Let's see how far this goes. Next, I checked the catering company. Same story. Paid in advance. Confirmed booking. No outstanding balance. I checked everything. Photographer. Florist. Music. Every single vendor had one thing in common. Paid. Fully.
Which meant one thing. There was no real bill, just a demand. A demand they expected me to accept without question. That's when my phone buzzed. A message from my mother. Have you looked at the documents? I stared at the screen. For a second, I considered ignoring it. But instead I replied, yes. A few seconds later, you understand, right? I almost laughed again. Understand what? That I was being charged for a wedding I wasn't invited to? That my own family thought this was normal? I typed slowly. No, explain it to me. There was a long pause. Then, your father would have wanted you to contribute equally. There it was again, my father. Always used as a reason, an excuse, a weapon. I clenched my jaw. Dad would have wanted me there, I replied. This time the response came slower. It would have caused problems. What problems? I typed. No reply. Of course, because the real answer wasn't something she could say out loud. The problem was me. I closed my phone and leaned back in my chair. For years, I had tried to understand them, to be patient, to fix things. But now I saw it clearly. They didn't want resolution. They wanted control. And they thought this was how they'd get it, by pressuring me, by guilt, by obligation. But they made one mistake, a big one. They assumed I was still the same person. I wasn't. That evening I made a call, not to Adam, not to my mother, but to someone they didn't expect. My father's old lawyer, Mr. Bennett. He answered on the second ring. "Emily?" he said, surprised. "It's been a while." "It has," I replied. "What can I do for you?" I took a breath. "I need to ask you something about the will." There was a pause. "Of course," he said. "What's going on?" I explained everything, the wedding, the bill, the demand. He didn't interrupt, but when I finished, he sighed. "That doesn't sound right," he said. "It isn't," I replied. "Did they mention anything about the inheritance?" he asked. I froze. "No, why?" Another pause. Then he said something that made my heart skip. "Because your father included a clause," he said. "A clause?" "Yes," he replied. "One that activates under specific conditions." My grip on the phone tightened. "What kind of conditions?" His voice lowered slightly. "If either beneficiary attempts to financially exploit the other," my heart started racing, "their share of the inheritance can be legally challenged." Silence. Heavy. Real. "You're saying?" I whispered. "I'm saying," he replied carefully, "that if this situation is proven to be coercion or manipulation," a pause, "your brother could lose everything." The room felt suddenly very still, because now everything made sense. The tension, the exclusion, the bill. This wasn't just about money, it was about pushing me, testing me, seeing how far they could go. But what they didn't realize was that they had just crossed a line. And now, they weren't in control anymore. I was. "Mr. Bennett," I said slowly. "Yes? I think it's time we take a closer look at that will." There was a pause, then, "I was hoping you'd say that," he replied. I hung up the phone, then looked down at the invoice one last time. $13,000. Your share. I smiled slightly, because now I had a response. And it wasn't going to be what they expected. Not even close.
I wasn't invited to my brother's wedding, but they sent me the $26,000 bill. The morning I decided to act, everything felt different, calmer, clearer, dangerous. For the first time since I received that envelope, I wasn't reacting anymore. I was planning. I sat at my kitchen table with a fresh cup of coffee, the invoice in front of me, and my laptop open. Next to it, a notepad filled with everything I had discovered so far. Paid vendors, no outstanding balances, a fake shared expense, and now, the clause in my father's will. I tapped my pen slowly against the table, thinking, connecting the dots, because this wasn't just about proving them wrong. This was about exposing what they were trying to do. And if I was going to do that, I needed proof, real proof, not assumptions, not emotions, facts. So I started with the simplest step. I emailed the venue. Subject, payment confirmation inquiry. I kept it professional, short, direct. "Hello, I am reviewing financial documentation related to a recent wedding held at your venue. Could you please confirm whether full payment was received prior to the event?" I didn't mention names, didn't explain the situation, just asked the question. Then I waited. It didn't take long. Within 2 hours, I had a reply. "Dear Emily, yes, the wedding in question was paid in full 1 week prior to the event. There are no outstanding balances." I stared at the email. There it was, written confirmation, proof. And that was just the beginning. Next, I contacted the catering company. Same question, same result. Paid in full. Then the photographer. Paid. Florist. Paid. Every single vendor confirmed the same thing. No debts, no unpaid bills, nothing. Which meant the invoice they sent me was completely fabricated. I leaned back in my chair slowly. For a moment, I just sat there. Because this wasn't just petty anymore. This wasn't just family drama. This was deliberate, calculated. They had created a false bill and expected me to pay it. And if I had, there would be no record, no accountability, just money, quietly transferred. Exactly what my father's clause was designed to prevent. I picked up my phone. Time for the next step. This time, I called my mother. She answered almost immediately. "Emily?" Her voice sounded cautious. "Good." "Hi, Mom," I said calmly. "Did you review everything?" she asked quickly. "I did." A pause. "And?" I smiled slightly. "I just had a few questions." Silence. Then, "What kind of questions?" she asked carefully. "About the payments," I said. "What about them?" "I contacted the venue," I said casually. Another pause. Longer this time. "And?" she asked. "They confirmed everything was paid in full." Silence. Heavy. Real. "I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding," she said quickly. "I also contacted the caterer," I continued. No response. "And the photographer. And the florist." Still nothing. Then I said it. "Everything was already paid, Mom." The silence that followed said everything. Then finally, "Adam handled the finances," she said. Of course he did. "So you didn't know?" I asked. "I trusted him," she replied. I nodded slowly, even though she couldn't see me. "Okay," I said. That caught her off guard. "Okay?" she repeated. "Yes," I said calmly. "I just wanted to understand." Another pause. Then, "So, you'll send your share?" she asked. That's when I knew. She wasn't confused. She wasn't unaware. She was part of it. And that realization hurt more than anything else, but I didn't show it. Instead, I smiled. "Yes," I said. Her tone changed instantly. Relief. "Good," she said. "That's the right thing to do." "Of course," I replied, then added, "I'll handle it properly." She didn't understand what I meant, but she would, very soon. That afternoon, I met with Mr. Bennett. His office hadn't changed. Same wooden desk, same shelves filled with files, same calm, measured presence. "Emily," he said as I walked in. "Mr. Bennett." We sat down. I placed the documents in front of him, the invoice, the emails, the confirmations. He reviewed everything carefully, slowly, methodically. Then he leaned back. "Well," he said, "this is very clear." "How bad is it?" I asked. He looked at me directly. "Very bad," he replied. A pause. "For them." I exhaled slowly. "So the clause applies?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes," he said. "This qualifies as attempted financial exploitation." The words felt heavy, serious, final. "And what does that mean?" I asked. He folded his hands. "It means," he said, "we can challenge your brother's inheritance." My heart skipped. "Completely?" I asked. "If proven in court, yes." Silence. Because now, this wasn't just about $13,000. This was about everything. The company, the assets, the future. All of it. I looked down at the papers again. For years, Adam believed he deserved more, that I wasn't equal, that the will was wrong. And now, because of his own actions, he might lose everything. "Are you sure?" I asked quietly. Mr. Bennett nodded. "They made the first move," he said. A pause. "You're just responding." I sat there for a moment, thinking, because this wasn't just legal anymore. This was personal, deeply personal. Then I made my decision. "Let's do it," I said. Mr. Bennett didn't look surprised. He simply nodded. Then we begin immediately, he replied. And just like that, everything changed. Because what my brother didn't realize was that sending me that bill was the biggest mistake he had ever made.
The moment I said, "Let's do it," there was no turning back. Mr. Bennett didn't waste time. Neither did I. Because once something becomes legal, it stops being emotional. It becomes strategic. First, he said, organizing the documents neatly, we need to send a formal notice. To Adam? I asked. Yes, he replied. And your mother? That didn't surprise me, but it still hurt. Even now, a small part of me had hoped she wasn't fully involved, but hope doesn't change facts. And the facts were clear. They both signed off on this. What kind of notice? I asked. He slid a blank paper toward himself. A legal warning, he said. We inform them that their demand is invalid, and that their actions may trigger the clause in your father's will. My chest tightened slightly. That's going to escalate things, I said. He looked at me calmly. They already escalated it, he replied. He wasn't wrong. This wasn't me starting a fight. This was me ending one. By the time I left his office, the letter was ready. Clear, direct, unavoidable. It stated everything. The invoice was fraudulent. All vendors had been paid in full. Their demand was considered financial coercion. And if not withdrawn immediately, legal action would begin, including a full challenge to Adam's inheritance. I read it twice, then signed it, because once my name went on that paper, everything changed. The letter was sent that same day, and for the first time since this started, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Control. But it didn't last long, because the next morning, my phone rang. Adam. I stared at the screen for a few seconds, then answered. What is this? He snapped immediately. No greeting. No hesitation. Just anger. I stayed calm. It's a response, I said. To what? He shot back. You think you can threaten me with lawyers? I'm not threatening you, I replied. I'm correcting you. There was a pause. Short. Sharp. Then he laughed. A cold, dismissive laugh. You're overreacting, he said. Was going to get. But then came the part that changed everything. We're willing to drop the request. I paused. Then read the next line. If you agree not to pursue any legal action. There it was. Not regret. Not guilt. A deal. Another attempt at control. I finished the letter slowly. We're family. Let's not destroy everything over a misunderstanding. I lowered the paper. And for a moment, I just sat there. Because this wasn't new. This was how it always worked. They push. They take. They cross the line. And when there are consequences, they call it misunderstanding. I picked up my phone and called Mr. Bennett. They responded, I said. And, he asked. They want to drop it. If I drop everything. A short pause. Then, and what do you want? He asked. That question stayed with me. Because for the first time, this wasn't about reacting to them. This was about deciding for myself. What did I want? Justice? Closure? Peace? Or something else? I looked down at the letter again. At the words. At the tone. At everything it represented. Then I took a deep breath. I want them to understand, I said slowly. Understand what? He asked. That they don't get to do this anymore. Silence. Then we continue, he said. I nodded. Yes, I replied. We continue. Because this wasn't just about a wedding, or a bill, or even money. It was about something deeper. Something they had ignored for years. And now, they were finally going to face it. Whether they liked it or not. I wasn't invited to my brother's wedding, but they sent me the $26,000 bill. Once I said, we continue, there was no more hesitation, no more second-guessing, no more waiting for them to do the right thing, because they already had their chance, and they chose not to take it. The next step was official. Mr. Bennett filed the legal notice to challenge Adam's inheritance. And just like that, what started as a ridiculous $13,000 demand turned into something much bigger. A full investigation into the will, into the finances, into everything. First, nothing happened. No calls, no messages, no reaction. But I knew better. Silence in situations like this is never empty. It's preparation. 3 days later, I got the call. Emily, Mr. Bennett said, his tone more serious than usual. Yes. They've responded. My heart tightened. How? They've hired a lawyer, he said. Of course they did. And? I asked. They're denying everything, he replied. I almost smiled. Predictable. They claim the invoice was a miscommunication, he continued. Miscommunication. That word again. Like sending a $13,000 bill was some kind of accident. They also said, he added, that you're overreacting and trying to manipulate the situation for financial gain. I let out a quiet breath. There it was. Turn it around. Blame me. Make me the problem. Same pattern. Different situation. And the clause? I asked. They're challenging its validity, he said. Can they do that? They can try, he replied. But based on what we have, it won't hold. Good. Because I wasn't doing this halfway. The following weeks were intense. Meetings, documents, statements. Every detail of the situation was examined. Every receipt, every email, every message. And slowly, the truth started to take shape. Clear. Undeniable. The invoice wasn't a mistake. It wasn't confusion. It was intentional. A calculated attempt to pressure me into paying. Exactly what my father's clause warned against. Then came the. For more inspiring and heart-touching stories like this, please subscribe to our channel.